My name is Philip G. I've been involved with camels for 20 odd years, and I run an operation called Explore the Outback Camel Safaris in the Central Australian deserts. And we're making this video to show you the principles involved in training a camel from its wild and natural state. Many ways to catch wild camels. You can jump out of a helicopter on top of it, wring its neck. You can rope it off the back of a Toyota, or you can do it in a much better way, which is what we do, is we use quiet camels and run the wild camels into the quiet camels and block them up all day with motorbikes or horsemen. At the end of the day, we move the quiet camels and the new wild ones into a yard, whether it's a portable yard that we've just made, or an old yard, or a yard on a pastoral property. And we herd all of these camels into the yard, and we trick them into going into the yard because the quiet ones just run in and the wild ones just follow. Then you got them then. Once you got them in the yard, don't freak them out, don't get them all excited, don't fill them full of fear. Move them from pen to pen slowly. Peel the camels off one by one. Don't just rush them through the gates. If you give your camel time to calm down in the yard, you'll be able to go through your selection process much easier. Selecting your camel. Well, training a camel doesn't really start with getting the camel in your hand. It starts with the selection process. Selecting your wild camel is pretty tricky. Basically, you have to be able to read a camel that has the potential to trust you, to give you the benefit of doubt when you're trying to do something with it. There's many ways of doing that. We find that the best way is to run all of the camels into the yards, and then we draft the camels off from one pen in the yards to another pen. And as we draft them off one by one, the ones that jump around and be silly and run past you and kick out, forget them. Not necessarily so, but that's a good sort of rule of thumb. The ones that walk past you, look at you sideways and just sort of don't ever break out into a canter or a run, but just sort of walk calmly past you, they get drafted off into the possible pen. One of the most important parts of selecting your camel is that you get a camel that's obviously going to give you what we call the benefit of doubt. Now, it's very hard to actually assess that when you look at your camel, but the one thing that you can see in a wild camel that's had no training whatsoever is you can see curiosity, or you can see fear in its eyes. It takes a little bit of experience, but a camel person will know. Get help. A camel that's really going to be hard work has a lot of fear in its eyes. And a camel that's going to be easy to train has got curiosity in its eyes. And a curious camel will come up to you, will put its head out and try and sniff you, or wonder what it is that you're doing. Whereas a fearful camel will do a little bit of that, but in its eyes it's staring at you, it's glaring at you, and it's looking at you sideways. It's a big difference. You got to picture this. The camel is a prey animal, and we all hear about predator-prey relationships, but let's not muck around with it. The camel gets eaten and we eat the camels. When we're handling a camel, or when we're approaching a wild camel that knows nothing, that camel is thinking about how it's going to save itself from getting its jugular ripped open and having itself eaten. All we're worried about is whether we're going to get kicked and hurt because that camel sort of jumps on top of us. You've got to understand that the camel's fear level is 10 times greater than yours. The camel is very frightened. And the fundamental principle in training a wild camel, you must never vindicate the camel's fear. If the camel thinks that you're going to strike it, don't strike the bloody thing. If the camel thinks that you're going to move into its space, don't move into its space. Understand that if you vindicate the camel's fear, it'll establish an opinion of you very rapidly, so you need to move fairly slowly. Fear is the thing that drives camels, and nothing else. You must always remove the cause of fear, because if you don't, the camel will sort of slip back into a mild panic, or maybe even a major panic, and it's very difficult to recover from those sort of situations. So I'm going to say it again. Understand that you must never vindicate a camel's fear of you. Benefit of doubt is all about whether the camel's prepared to see what it is you're going to do before it reacts, rather than reacts before it's got any idea what it is that you're going to do. Sometimes you just have to look at a camel and it'll go silly. Okay, so you want a camel that you can look at, perhaps even move towards, perhaps even put your hand up to let it have a bit of a sniff. Even your face, for example, let it sniff your face. If the camel lets you do that and it's had no handling, it's got no preconceived ideas of what humans are like, it's got great potential to give you the benefit of doubt. And they are the camels that you want. And this is what you work on. This is a fundamental principle in training a camel. Look for that benefit of doubt. If they don't give it to you, try another one. As far as I'm concerned, I have a belief, and a very strong belief, that once your camel trusts you, you can do anything with it. People often say to me, how do you train a camel to do this? And how do you train a camel to do that? Well, I really don't have any fancy answers for that. Quite simply, if your camel trusts you, it'll let you do anything. It'll let you walk it through mud, it'll let you walk it through water, it'll push down, it'll walk up a steep cliff, it'll walk down a steep cliff. It'll let you put a nose line on a nose peg if you use nose pegs. It'll let you lift up its legs. It'll let you do anything. It'll let you saddle it, it'll let you ride it, it'll let you race it. So it's not a matter of training it to do these things. Once the camel trusts you, you can do anything with it, virtually anything, within reason. You can't be silly about it. So trust is everything. And you know what? It is very, very easy to establish trust with a camel. It's so easy. You can do it with a wild camel with no preconceived ideas on what humans are like. You can basically have a camel trusting you within 2 days. Okay, in 2 days you can't do everything, but you got the seeds of sown for a good trusting relationship. And how you build on that trust is understanding that camels have no natural aggression whatsoever. None. Zero. Zilch. Nothing. No natural aggression. I often use an analogy of a big burly bloke walking down the street, and you see him coming, okay, and he's looking you right in the eye, and you can see he's mean and he's looking for trouble. The last thing you're going to do is go up and punch him in the nose, because you might provoke that big burly fella to really give you a bit of a hiding. Well, it's the same with camels. The last thing that camel wants to do is grab your arm and shake it about and rip it off your body. I've had camels whose trust I won within 10 minutes. Proper trust. Stand under their front legs, walk around their back legs and no kicking, sniffing my face, full on curiosity, no fear. They're properly wild camels. They just click. I've had other camels that I've had for over a decade, 15, 16 years, and I never won their trust. And you get that. So when you get a camel, know that you're going to get a camel that falls within that range, 10 minutes or 15 years. And it could be anywhere in there, you know. Just as a rule of thumb though, let me tell you that most camels fall into the 3 or 4 day bracket. Okay. The whole process that we use with our operation and on our annual training camps is focused on trust. And the funny thing is, it works. There's a couple of other things that we need to thrash out a little bit here too. A couple of very basic principles, and one of them is patience. In my belief, it's my belief that the number one virtue for training camels is patience. There's many good camel handlers throughout the world. There's many in Australia, many all over the world. And they'll all tell you the same thing. If you haven't got any patience, don't even bother with camels, because you need to have patience. You got to be nice and kind. They think the worst until you prove otherwise. So if you don't have patience, you'll vindicate their fear. Now, patience is one thing, but if you're trying to get a young camel to sit down, say you just trained it to sit down, we'll talk about that later. If that camel keeps jumping up, annoys the hell out of you, what are you going to do? You're going to growl at it? What are you going to do? You're going to yank it about? I'll tell you what, the answer's no. You can't do any of that. we teach a concept that we call gentle, enduring persistence. It's quite simple. Be gentle, be enduring. I don't care how long it takes. If you've issued a request to your camel, let's just say it's something simple like sit down. Let's keep it simple. That camel's got to sit down. Don't muck around. If that camel takes half an hour to sit down, all the camel learns is that it can take half an hour of mucking around before it has to do what it is you want it to do. Be gentle, be enduring, and be persistent. If you do those three things, the camel will respect you and it'll never fear you. And from the very, very early days of handling a young, untouched camel, if you demonstrate patience and gentle, enduring persistence, that camel will trust you always. But let's just take an ideal scenario where you've got a camel, it's 4 years old, it's untouched, it's healthy, and it's got no preconceived ideas about what humans are like. So what do? Well, let me tell you one thing, and probably the most important thing about the period of first contact, is that camel perceptions of handler aggression take a long time to repair. If you move into that camel space too quickly, or eyeball it too aggressively, or move too rapidly, or in any way do anything that that overexcites your camel, you'll blow it. So understand that if the camel makes up its mind early that it needs to fear you, you've got an uphill battle to change its mind. So, principles of first contact are don't overexcite your camel. In this video, you're going to see us lasso a camel in a small round yard, tangle it up, throw it onto the ground, jump on its hump, completely freak it out, which is exactly what we've been saying you don't do. Remember? Perceptions of handler aggression take a long time to repair. Well, we get away with it, and it's just as well that we can. We use a process called winning the head, which calms the camel, and not only does it calm the camel, it takes away the camel's head shyness for later on down the track, and also for later on down the track, it allows us to calm the camel when it's starting to get a bit nervous. So we kill several birds with one stone, and not only that, we get the halter on the camel's head within about 5 minutes. Okay, that goes around behind the head. This goes over the top of the nose. When you pull the lead rope in this direction, right, this weight here, the weight needs to be taken on the rope around the neck. When you're pulling down, I think it's relatively obvious, the weight needs to be taken on the nose. What you don't want is to pull this way and the weight to be taken on the halter. Okay, if I pull this way, the weight's got to be on here, not here. See that? If I pull down, obviously I get the weight on his head. It's as simple as that. I want you to tie your lead rope onto your halter so as that you end up with the bit that goes around the neck pointing backwards. This bit here, see? That goes back onto the neck there. Okay, and the bit that goes off to your hands to be pointing forwards. Okay, and do a simple thumb knot, which is what I call this, simple thumb knot, and have that much length to go around the neck. So do that with all your halters now.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Get that length.
Into this knot. So you tie this knot off, okay? You only have to do this initially. And the reason is, I'll explain shortly. Tie it off as tight as you can. Let's talk about getting the halter on the camel's head. Understand that once the halter's on the camel's head, that's it, the camel's trapped. And they have the ability to go absolutely stupid. So you need to protect yourself and your camel when you do it. Your camel's in the yard, small round yard, and you've got your rope in your hand. You don't make much eye contact with the camel. You let the camel run around the yard, walk around the yard. Don't spook it by eyeballing it the whole time. Throw your rope, dunk. First try is important. If you can't get it over the head first time or second time, stop throwing the rope because you're just going to freak your camel out. Get rid of your lasso part of it, throw the end over the camel's neck, get a bit of wire and pull it back to you, tie your slip knot and then get it around the neck. This is a point where you don't want to frighten your camel too much. You don't do anything that's unnecessary to spook your camel. Okay, so you got your rope around the camel's neck. You don't want it right up the top of the neck because the minute you pull that tight, the camel's just going to go absolutely stupid. Throw its head onto the rails, throw its head onto the ground. Very dangerous time if the rope doesn't fall right to the bottom of the neck around the shoulders. And you pick your moment and you walk in front of it. Walk fast in front of it. So as you end up with one loop around the camel's legs. Then you hold that position. Wait till the camel settles. Don't run around. Don't get excited. No yahooing. Pick your moment and then run in front of the camel's legs again. Things can get pretty tense here. Camel can get really frightened, start jumping up and down. But once you got a lap around the camel's legs, preferably two, you can actually reel the rope in with your hands and grab the tail of the camel. They don't kick you. Camel's frightened by this stage, so just move slowly, but move slick but slow is the term I use. Get that camel's tail, stop it spinning around and hold onto the rope. Then your offsider, someone who's experienced, comes in and grabs hold of that tail, takes it off you and hangs onto it. And what we're doing there is we're trying to stop the camel from spinning and unravelling the rope around its legs. Then you just pull the rope tighter and tighter, and in the end they just can't move and they try and take a step and they fall over on their side. Camels actually, once they fall down, sort of get into some submissive type mode, you know, where they don't, they sort of tend to give in there. Oh well, I'm buggered now, let's just see what happens. And that's pretty well the case. They can throw their head around a bit, make out like they're going to go you and bite you, but they won't, unless you really, really pick on a camel and be really horrible to it. That camel is very, very frightened to latch onto you. So the camel's down on the ground. The offsider, who held the tail, sits on the hump and stops the camel sitting back up again. My job is then to grab the head and pull it gently down onto the ground and I hold onto the camel's head in a very unthreatening way. I'm not ripping it, I'm not shaking, there's no muscle, there's no strength involved. It's just gentle coercion, gently lower the head onto the ground, into my lap, and I get my hand onto the camel's nose and I caress the camel's nose. And I'll maintain that very gentle stroking and caressing until that camel's heartbeat slows down, until its breathing slows down, until it drops the weight of its head into my lap and relaxes. And that's what I call winning the head. Once that camel allows you to stroke its nose in a calming manner, from that point on that camel will never be head shy. It'll always allow you to make contact with its nose, and once you can do that, once you can make contact with the camel's nose, it'll allow you to recover, what I call recover, later on in the training process. When the camel goes silly, gets really frightened for some reason, starts jumping around, you're trying to get it to sit down, for example. So we've got a situation now where the camel's on the ground, the hump person's sitting on its hump, I'm holding its head in a non-threatening way and I'm calming it by caressing its nose. The camel's breathing slowed down, the fear levels have dropped, its heartbeat slowed, it's not shaking as much, and you know you're getting there, okay? When that happens, pretty important not to sort of get too sure of yourself, because that camel will kick out and jump out 2 or 3 more times, 4 more times, 5 more times. So your hump person must hang on to the hump, and I've got to hang on to the head. Not aggressively, but I've got to maintain contact with the head. And if it flies out of my lap, I've got to stand back up, pick it up and bring it back down as gently as I can. Talk to the camel all the time. It's okay, matey, it's okay, it's okay. The next step is you put the halter on them. And it's not as, it's easy now. The camel's relaxed, it's calm, it's not struggling. Somebody passes me the halter and I just put it on their head. I can even let the head go and get on my knees and stand and kneel in front of it and tie my knots and get everything just right. If the camel starts to struggle again, that's okay. You let it struggle, get its head, bring it back down, relax it, calm it, don't fight it, don't get angry, no swift movements, calm. Then what I do is I bring in the client, the person who's going to buy this camel, to take it home with him at the end of the training camp, and I say, right, you come in, make sure the camel can see you walking towards it, come in nicely, come in purposefully, walk up to your camel and give it a little touch on the nostrils, on the front of the nose, just a little one, and don't have any fly repellent on, don't have any sunscreen on, don't have any perfumes on, and let that camel get a scent of you, of your skin. Just a little one, just a little touch. Just come in, touch the camel's nose, then walk away again. And straight away that camel associates that scent with a non-confrontational human, somebody who's not going to throw them on the ground, grab their head, jump on their hump, throw ropes over them. Then I bring in my coach camel, what I call a coach camel, a trained camel. Any camel will do, just a camel that does as it's told and big. Sit it down right next to the camel that's lying on the ground, tie it onto that camel, and then when everything's calm and relaxed and all the ropes are out and nothing can get tangled, you get your coach camel up. And then your young camel, or the camel that you're training, doesn't have to be young, he'll jump up with it and he'll stand there next to the coach camel. He gets a lot of security from the fact that there's a trained camel right next to it, between it and me. He loves that. So generally he'll just stand and look quite bewildered, but he'll just stand there and look around. After a few seconds he'll work out that he's trapped with the rope and the halter. Some camels go absolutely stupid, some camels don't. You need to assume that every camel is going to go stupid, so make sure that the rope's tied short. Don't give them room to smash their head up and down and whack it into the ground or whack it into the fence railings. You've got to stand there with your coach camel until your young trainee camel accepts the fact that it's tied up, that it's connected, that it can't get away. Once the situation settles, what you then do is you reach out and try and get a touch on the young camel's nose, okay? Now this is the hard bit. Pretty hard to articulate it, but what we're trying to do here is to demonstrate to that camel that touch is non-threatening. It's actually quite nice, in fact. Minimise the eye contact, look away, put your arm up, creep along the rope a little bit, walk towards it, get underneath the jaw. You just need to touch it, just touch the camel, and once you've got that touch, preferably on the nostrils, pull your hand away, you've done your job. You've shown that camel that there can be contact without drama. Young camels must learn to respect the rope. They must. It is so important, and once they do it, it makes it so easy. And respecting the rope is all about the camel learning that if it pulls on the rope, there's a dead stop. Okay? Dead stop. The rope doesn't break, the rope doesn't slip, the rope doesn't give. It's free or it's a dead stop. One or the other. So you can imagine a camel tied to a steel post in the yard. Everything's fine until it reaches the end of the extension of the rope, and then dunk, that's it. That's what respecting the rope is all about. If I tie that camel up to a post, which you don't do straight away incidentally, but if I do, and as I'm tying the camel up, the camel pulls away and the rope goes zzz, and pulls out of my hands or breaks or whatever, that camel, for the rest of its training period, and perhaps even for the rest of its life, will know that if it gets its timing right, it can pull away. and it'll try it continually. Using your coach camel, you take that young camel out of the yard, and there you go. It's your first leading exercise for that young camel, and they'll follow, and if they don't, they'll get dragged. We take the coach camel out and we tie the coach camel to the rail, and we leave the young camel tied onto the coach camel, and we leave them in that arrangement until the young camel relaxes, until it's obviously accepted the fact that it's tied and it can't get away. If we tie the young camel to the rail straight away, it's quite likely going to go silly and bash its head on the ground or on the rail itself. Nasty stuff. The next step is to tie it onto the rail, leaving the coach camel next door to it so that it doesn't sort of feel alone and lonely and get frightened. This is one area where you don't botch it. When you untie that rope off the coach camel, you must tie it to the rail without the camel pulling back successfully. Okay, so timing is everything here. You position your two camels, you untie the knot when everything's stable, when the ropes are loose. Don't try and do it when the camel's still pulling back. Timing is everything here. Undo the knot, tie it onto the rail, done. Move your coach camel away about 10 feet and leave them both there. And you'll find that from that point on, that young camel very rapidly respects the fact that it's tied and it can't get away. Okay, let's talk a little bit about tying the camels up and the sort of lengths that you need to have your camels and the sort of knots that you use. Make no mistake, a camel that's been tied up for the first time got no idea the situation it's in. If you tie that rope too long, it'll do a full circle on itself, get the rope all tangled up around its legs, it'll fall over in the middle of the night, and if you don't hear it, that camel will be dead in the morning. So it's a dangerous time for the camel now, and you've got to look after it. And the way you look after it is you tie it short and you tie it high. So it can't get enough oomph to lift its front legs up and over the rope, and also long enough so it can sit down. It's got to be able to sit down at night, but you can't tie it long enough for it to get its head down on the ground. So when you tie them up, you use a knot that you can undo, and if you can't undo it, you cut it. You don't muck around, you just cut the rope. If something goes wrong and they get tangled, you cut the rope. So when you first tie them up, you can make it quite long. Say 5 feet, 6 feet long even, quite long. Before you go to bed that night, and your bed is right in that yard where the camels are, before you go, you shorten the rope to about 2 feet. A bit hard to sort of say really, depends on the size of the camel and the height of your yard fence, but it's got to be short so as that when the camel sits down, the rope is nice and not tight, but there's a good length of rope up to where it's hitched onto the fence, onto the rail. If you do that, your camel will definitely survive the night. If you don't, you're asking for trouble. The way you tie a good camel up is with a bowline. Alright, no problem. Put a decent tail on it. That's the way you tie up a good camel. When you've got camels that are highly likely to get tangled, like camels that you've just started to train, okay, there's really only one knot to use. And that's the one I showed you, the half clove hitch, and then the full clove hitch. Okay, and it doesn't matter how much tension that knot's under. You put that under as much tension as you like, and I can get that open with my little finger. See that? Yeah. Alright, and before it slides down, you've got to make sure you grab it. Yeah. And that's the knot that I usually use, or that's the knot that you should use to tie up young camels that might get tangled, because you can always undo it.
Tie it down, what, to the tree?
To the tree, like we've got them tied up there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or to a hitching rail. Yeah. You know you can get it undone. I guess the problem with it is that this can happen. is that over the period of the night, see how it slipped down to the tree?
Yeah.
See that?
Yeah.
You can end up with a bloody knot down there you'll never undo, so you get a knife. And there's a way to stop that. Believe it or not, you do this. 1, 2. See that?
Yeah.
You're just putting more friction and it won't close up as easy. And like any knot, it won't work unless you set the thing. See that? And it's far less likely to pull down to the tree. It will, but the camel's going to have to do it with his nose. The way a bowline works is you come around your stumps and you make a loop. And you hear all sorts of stories about rabbits and trees. But the easiest way to do this is to make sure that this goes into the hole on the opposite side to this. There, see, it's the opposite on this piece of rope. If the loop was the other way, okay, the opposite side to this is through the bottom. And then basically what you do is you lock this piece of rope onto here. And there's only one way to do that. That's like that. If you do it any other way, you're not locking that rope onto this piece. And like any knot, it never really works unless you set it properly. You've got to set it. Make sure that this particular piece here is not pulled right up into there like that. You don't want that. You've got to set it. Pull that. Dunk, dunk. And the secret to a bowline is that it's always easy to undo. You just need to go like that. And the whole knot just falls apart quite easily. The advantages of the bowline is it can take a lot of pressure and still be able to be undone. The disadvantages of a bowline are that you can't undo it under pressure. And if you have an emergency situation, you need to be cutting your rope. Okay. Now, a reef knot's really only used in one place in this operation, and that is around the neck when you tie a camel down. And that's a reef knot. The most common mistake with a reef knot is this. Dunk.
That's right.
Dunk.
Yeah.
And you don't get a flat knot. See how it starts to twist on itself? Ends up looking a bit like that. That's just, we just call it a granny knot. And the reef knot goes like that. Chunk. Chunk. And it looks square. And a reef knot needs to be set too. Don't leave it loose or it'll pull undone. Let's make a comment with that left over right and right over left.
That's what you do.
It never seems to work as an instruction for doing a reef knot.
See that?
Here's the cheap way to remember a reef knot.
That's what you don't.
Okay, you just do your knot any old how, I don't care how you do it. Dunk, that way will do. Over you go, one loop. Okay, so you end up with that. And here's where you go left over right, right over left. What did I do last time? Was it left over right or right over left? And you know what? The way you do it is this, or this, whichever one you pick in your hand, goes on the same side. See, the two are coming out the same side of this. Okay. So if you go like that, you just have a look at it and you go, oh yeah, that's got to come out the same side. And it can't do it there. You've got to go to there. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. I'm going to do the quick release again. It's no different to a normal reef knot, other than you don't pull it right through.
That's right.
Okay. But this knot in particular needs to be set quite tight, otherwise it will undo by itself, just with a little bit of movement.
Yeah, and you always got to lay an extra string on that side.
And then when you want to release it, even under pressure, you can release that like that quite easily. Not always, but often. One loop, two loops.
Are they opposite?
Same loops, just see the rope rolling along. put them together.
Just put them together.
1, 2, and the second loop you did, put behind the first loop you did.
Yeah.
Okay, what I want to talk to you about now is teaching a camel to sit down, to couch down, to whoosh down, whatever you want to call it. Basically to get down on its brisket and sit down effectively. Well, there's all sorts of ways of doing it, and as you travel around and meet other camel people, you'll see them doing many different things, and they all work, no question about it. The camel learns very, very quickly to sit down. We use a technique with what we call a tickle stick, and it's just a piece of a branch off a tree, one of their favourite trees that they like to eat. And we, quite simply, we just tickle them underneath the back legs, in around the pisser, underneath the front legs, and we just tickle them and irritate them a little bit. It's not an aggressive thing. It's done with an implement that they quite like and actually would quite like to have a nibble of. And we just tickle them, and they start tucking their legs up, left leg, right leg, and they start flicking out at it with their front legs. Once they've sat down, you back the pressure off. That's their reward. Okay, it's sort of common sense really. And then what you do is you try and get a bit of a touch on their nose. Same sort of thing, get a touch on their nose, show them that that touch is okay, that there's no drama. Small touch, not a big touch, and then pull back. The objective for the rest of the day then is to go around that camel, touching it, make out like you're looking for something, like looking for prickles in its coat, for example, and examine every square inch of that animal's coat. And what you want is for that camel to jump up 100 times. If you get a camel that doesn't jump up, a goody two-shoes sort of camel, sits down on the ground all the time and doesn't jump up, you're heading for trouble, because that camel doesn't learn anything. You need that camel to jump up. When they jump up, you don't rush back and get a big fright yourself. Just let them jump up. Try and maintain contact with their head holder if you're there, but don't grab at it. Don't get lunged around if the camel's throwing its head around. Just let go, relax. Then you tickle it again, same routine. And once the camel's done it once, it starts going down very, very quickly until it starts to rebel. But rebellion doesn't happen for a day or two. So you tickle it, down it goes, and then you do the same thing all day. But you got to give the camel a break, okay? You got to let the camel sit down and then leave the yard completely. Once you've left the yard, it's okay for that camel to stand up. Have a bit of free time. Give it half an hour, go and have some lunch or a cup of tea or coffee or whatever. Come back in and do the same thing again. You tickle it, talk to it nicely, whisper to it. Don't up the ante, you know, don't get aggressive. Definitely you don't let aggression enter into the formula whatsoever, in any shape or form. And there's only one way that you can stay totally calm, and that's with the knowledge that the camel's frightened a buggery of you. It makes no move to cause you any injury whatsoever. The only way you're going to get hurt is if you get into that camel's space too early, if you push the boundaries too hard. And as I've said before, if you do push the boundaries too hard and you get within the lashing limits of the camel, it snarls at you, kicks out at you, but stand back, start again, get your touch on the nose, just a touch, a nice touch, and pull back. If you don't get a nice touch, then you need to persevere with that until you do. Okay, so what happens if the camel doesn't sit down? You can tickle it to death and the camel just stands there. We call it propping it. There's no fear in the camel, it just doesn't want to sit down, that's the end of it. And you can tickle it all day. What you mustn't do is start poking with your tickling stick. Just got to be a nice little tickle. Okay, so the camel's propped, the back legs are spread out, its weeing, its front legs are propped, it's got its head down, and it's just sulking. What do? Well, it depends on how much time you've got, you know. If you've got plenty of time, come back the next day and have another go. On our training camps we don't have time and we push the boundaries pretty hard. There's really only one thing to do, and that's to tangle it up and make it fall over. It's pretty dramatic, but you've got to remember that we've already won the head. We won the head in the first few minutes in the yard after throwing it the first time. We were able to show that camel that there can be touch without drama on the most sensitive part of their body, right on the tip of their nose, and that's a very comforting thought for the camel. So we tangle them up to the point where they fall over or go to sit down. As soon as they go to sit down, loosen the pressure off around their legs so they can sit down and let their legs spread out. If you hold the tension in tight, they'll sit down and then they'll fall over because they can't get their legs out to balance themselves once they're down. Not very nice, sure. Come away from the camel, calm it, hold the rope, get your touch on its nose, show it that there can be touch without drama, pull back, and then do the same thing, walk around the camel. This time when the camel jumps up, you go in with the tickle stick again. Give it a chance. Ask it nicely without the tickle stick, in fact. You work your way up. Whoosh down, matey, whoosh down. If that doesn't work, tickle him. You'll find that the tickle stick will go pretty close second time round. If it still doesn't work, you've got to do the rope again. If the camel jumps up, don't just amble over and say, come on, matey, you can't do that. You know, you've got to spring into action slowly. But spring into action, move straight towards the camel, grab it by the rope and say, come on matey, you can't do that, you know, that's not the rules, and tickle them. They'll go straight down every time, once they get the idea. Within 3 days of doing this, you can have that camel sitting down for an entire lunch break, out in the bush, out wherever you go, trekking or riding or whatever you're going to do. Within 3 days you can have that camel sitting down for an entire lunch break without being tied up to a rail. And if it jumps up, which they do, they forget. They get into a bit of a daydream, they look around, they see something nice they want to eat and they go, I'll have that. And up they get and off they go to go and have a bit of a feed. Well, that's great, but you've got to be reactive. You've got to go up to that camel, walk him back to where he was and say, come on matey, you can't do that, you've got to whoosh down, and whoosh him down. And they'll go straight down with as much honesty as you could ever wish from an animal. So let's go back to whooshing down. Whooshing down is quite simple with the tickle stick. You tickle them until they want to sit down to stop the tickling. Then you back off, reward them with a touch on the nose, talk to them nicely, walk around them. As I said, you do that all day. Give them a break once or twice. If they jump up, the more often they jump up, the better. Gives you another opportunity to reaffirm what the instruction is. I want to talk about establishing a work ethic with a camel. No point having a camel that hugs you to death and smudges you to death and loves you to death if when you try and whoosh it down it jumps around and throws a big wobbly and cuds all over you and you can't put a saddle on, you can't do anything. There's plenty of camels like that. I've met plenty of people with camels that are wonderful, trusting animals, but the minute you try and do something with them they turn into proper terrors. The establishment of a work ethic is one of the things that you do very early in the training program. And the way I do it, once the camels are free from what I call the coach camel, the camel that drags them along, once they're free and with their trainee handler or with their handler, I have 2 things that I do then. I say, right, today we're going to walk, and we're going to walk for 400 metres or a kilometre. The camel's allowed to eat while it walks, but it can't stop. When we get there, I say, righto, now's camel's time. You got to give your camel a feed. Stay in front of the head at all times, because if you get behind the head, the camel can pull away on you very easily. And you can see how we're establishing a work ethic here. Walking and eating, but no stopping. Stopping and eating, it's good fun time, the camel's relaxed. It's quite good bonding time actually. And this is pretty important, and you must have this understanding throughout the entire training program. Don't confuse what I call bonding time and work time. You can have both, but don't fluctuate between one and the other all the time. And the very second you give a camel instruction, whether it's pulling the head or whatever it is, that binding time becomes work. So the trick here is to try and ensure that you don't confuse the two. Go for a walk, then stop. Go for another walk, then stop. Sit down for lunch and whoosh your camel down. It must stay down for the whole lunch time. After lunch, go for a walk, stop. But don't walk, stop, walk, stop, walk, stop the whole way. If you follow that rule, you'll end up with a camel that learns what a work ethic's all about. When you tie a camel up, okay, the length of the rope from here, which is where it's attached to the camel in front of, is quite important. If this is too long, this piece here, it just gets tangled in the knee here and freaks the camel out a bit sometimes. You don't want it too short like that, because then the camel behind can't sort of get its foot properly. It sort of trips over things all the time because it doesn't get enough chance to see. It's got to be sort of long enough so as it can reach the ground comfortably and eat as it's walking along. Something about there, you know, about there is nice. It depends a lot on how tall the camel is at the front, how quiet the camel is at the front, even whether the wind's blowing this way or that way as to whether the wind's going to blow that rope up into there. But that's about the length, you know, you learn from experience, but that's a nice length to have, about there. Let's talk about the concept of pushing boundaries. I guess in some ways it's a little bit self-explanatory, but pushing boundaries is all about extending the capabilities of your camel, improving its level of trust of you by doing more with it and having the camel cope with it. You start off with just teaching the camel to tie up, and that extends to making contact without freaking the camel out. That extends to whooshing it down, and the camel does it happily. Pushing boundaries is all about taking advantage of every opportunity you get to do something else with that camel, to imprint on that camel's mind that that's okay. For example, a camel that's quite frightened, it's propped and it won't whoosh down with a tickle stick, it doesn't kick. So you walk around that camel talking to it nicely. It's okay, matey, and touch its back legs, right down its back legs. It won't kick you. Go around the other side and touch that camel's back legs. Take advantage of every opportunity you get. Next time you're in a similar situation with that camel and the camel's not stressed out, it'll let you touch its back legs because it's already had a touch there that resulted in no drama, so it's already learnt that that's okay. Pushing boundaries is all about advancing yourself with that camel, and you take every opportunity. A good camel handler pushes boundaries to the max. Pushing boundaries is something that invariably results in the camel lashing out at you, and I always say push boundaries and push them hard, but keep within the lashing limit of the camel. Don't push it to the point where it cuds on you. Don't push it to the point where it strikes out at you. Don't push it to the point where it's scared silly. You just push it to its ability, to its level of trust, what it can cope with. Okay, let's just say you've overstepped the boundary, the camel's lashed out at you, no problems. Because we win the head in the first few minutes of contact, we then step back. The camel learns nothing if it's got a tight rope. Get your touch on the nose, as we've said many times. Just a small touch, but a nice touch. And pull your hand away, relax. The camel recovers then. It sort of feels comfortable once again, and in you go again. And you try and do the same thing, whatever it was that you were doing before. And a big part of this pushing boundaries is not having any fear of the camel. With the people that come to me to learn how to train camels, the big thing that they need to overcome is fear of the camel. And I say to them, I say, look, that camel thinks that you're going to throw it to the ground, rip its jugular out and eat it. That's what that camel's thinking. Whereas on the other hand, you are thinking that camel's going to kick me and hurt me. Well, look at the difference. Look at the difference in what you've got to be frightened about. Be calm. That camel is not going to hurt you. It looks like it's going to hurt you. Don't be frightened by that. The only camel that bites is a mistreated camel or a bull. If you believe that, it's not so much believing, you just have to know it. It's true. They do not want to get into you and hurt you. So when you're pushing boundaries and the camel's lashed out and it's really frightened, don't lose your cool. Stay calm. Your camel has learnt to trust you, and you have to take advantage of that. Okay, tying down a camel. Tying down a camel is something that you really don't have to do. It's one of these things that you do if you're stuck for time. Well, not even stuck for time, but it's something that you do if you really want to start pushing boundaries hard. And there's many ways to tie a camel down, and I guess if you travel around the world, many camel cultures use different techniques. I use a technique, I don't even know where it came from. It was shown to me years ago by a fellow who had his camels, and I haven't seen a better one since. All the techniques work by stopping the legs unravelling by tying them up to the neck. Now, if you've taught your camel to tie up, which is one of the first things that you do, the camel's already learnt to cope with a fairly severe form of entrapment. It's come to terms with it. You don't start to tie a camel down until the camel copes well with being tied up. So you tie your camel up, walk around your camel like you did in the very first days, so as it gets to jump up. You really want the camel to jump up to feel what it's like to be tied down. The camel absolutely freaks out. We get away with it on our training camps because we've won the head and we can recover after every drama and the camel relaxes again. That's the secret to trust training. Tie the camel down, walk around it, tickle its bum, something, whatever you do, try and get the camel to jump up. And when it jumps up, it's going to freak out. Hold its head, talk to it nicely, don't let it fall onto trees, or don't let it injure itself. You know, they can do all sorts of things. So you stay there with it, calm as, you know, talk to it nicely. It'll get a lot of comfort from that. Eventually it'll sit back down again, and then you back off and say, it's okay matey, it's okay. Get your touch on the nose, just a little touch, pull your hand away, you watch the camel relax. Sure enough, seconds later, it'll jump up again. Or try to jump up. Absolutely freak out. This time won't be so bad. It'll sit down again. Seconds later again, it'll do it again. And very rapidly it'll come to terms with it. It doesn't like it. No way does it like it. But it accepts it and it trusts you. Once your camel's tied down, okay, and it's tried to jump around a few times and you've won its confidence, then you've got to get that camel up again. You've got to get it up because that camel needs to know that being trapped down on its belly is not where it's going to spend the rest of its life. It needs to know that there's an end to that. So you've got to untie the rope. Now, if you've done your knot properly, it's a reef knot with a slip pull cord on it, so you can pull the reef knot out. That's really the only knot to do. There is no other knot to do. The thing is though, is that the camel's got quite stressed about being tied down. It knows that something is applying pressure on the back of its neck in a really, you know, quite firm manner, holding that camel down. The camel doesn't understand it, but it knows it's on the back of its neck. So when you untie that knot, you've got to be holding on your camel with one hand and saying, whoosh down matey, whoosh down matey. And with the other hand, you untie the reef knot. Sometimes it's quite hard because they've pulled on it really, you know, the knot's pulled up very tight, but you get that pull cord and you just rip it open, get it off. Soon as possible, get your hand and your fingers into the top of the neck, okay? Push down so your fingers are replacing the pressure of the rope. You know, if you keep that pressure on, that camel doesn't think it can jump up. Once the knot's completely undone, don't pull it out from the legs, just undo the knot, even only halfway even, but best the whole way. Keep the pressure on your fingers, grab hold of the halter on the camel and go up, 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 up. But what you mustn't do is untie the rope and have the camel jump up. You can recover from it, but you're setting a really bad example. Camels mustn't get up unless you've told them to get up, or you've walked away and the job's done. Okay, so I just want to stress that you must use a reef knot. You must not let the camel jump up automatically once the knot's undone. And if you do, that camel's got to go straight back down again. And that's a time when things can get pretty messy. If you've stressed the camel out and it jumps up, you know in your heart you've got to get that camel down again because it wasn't allowed to do that. Let's just step back a little bit and just look at that with a bit of perspective. If the camel jumps up, it's bad, but it's not the end of the world, you know. Understand that the camel's stressed. It wants to jump up, settle, get your touch on the nose, give it a little bit of a scratch. Once your camel's relaxed and its eyes soften, you see all this, then have another go, whoosh it down, okay? And you just keep doing that. You just keep whooshing the camel down and tying it back up again, walking around it, untying it, getting it up, and repeat the process 10, 15, 20 times. Don't let the camel get sick of it. Once it's starting to get sick of it, that's it, finish. Finish on a good note. Get the touch on the nose, pull back, talk to it nicely, say well done matey. They'll understand all that tone, and give it something to eat. That's the end of the day. Yeah, nice twiddle, matey. Look at that. What a ripper. One of the most common questions I get asked is how long does it take to train a camel? Well, it can take anything from a few minutes to several years, unfortunately, to win their trust, but usually it falls into the bracket of 2 to 4 days. But a camel doesn't mentally mature until it's about 8 years old. You can have the best camel in the world at 1, 2, 3, 4, fantastic potential, but they don't realise that potential until they mature mentally. An immature camel is the first camel to start jumping up and down when it sees something suddenly in a bush as you're walking along. It's the first camel to throw its rider off, for example, if it gets a bit of a fright. It's the first camel to react when it hears a strange noise. It doesn't mean that the camel's not a good camel, it just means it's young, it's youthful. You can't have a great expectation of an immature camel, immature mentally. So, if a camel matures at about 8 years old, if you buy a camel and start training it at 4 years, you have to wait 4 years for that camel to be commercially reliable. So remember that. A camel matures at about 8 years old, sometimes 9, sometimes 10. And that's the age where you really start seeing reward from your efforts. But if somebody said to me, what's the most important thing that you do that gives you the result that you get? I would say there's a couple of very, very important things. One of them is in your level of understanding, and one of them is involved in the technique. The technique one is winning the head. If you win the head of a young camel in the first few minutes after it's been lassoed to the ground, you will always be able to recover from any drama and get that camel back to a level of trust again. If you don't win the camel's head in the first few minutes, the camel never lets you go near its head once it's standing and tied to a yard rail. So winning the head in the first few minutes with the camel on the ground is, in my opinion, critical. That's the technique one. The other one is in the knowledge of what it is that you're doing. If you can understand that camels have no natural aggression whatsoever, if you can understand that, it changes the way you think. Suddenly you start recognizing that all of this, what looks to be aggression going on around you with growling and wide open mouth and kicking and jumping and striking, and let me tell you that if that happens you're pushing the boundaries too hard, but it does happen. Instead of seeing that as aggression, you recognize that as just sheer fear. Nothing less, nothing more, just fear. The camel is absolutely frightened. You need to understand that camels are incredibly sensitive, unbelievably sensitive. And I'll demonstrate that by example. If before one of my commercial treks I growl at a camel, and I'm talking growl at him, really get up him because he's jumping around, for the rest of that trip, that camel will be uncomfortable with me. It won't sort of feel like it needs revenge. The camel's frightened of me. It's understood. It's understood that it's raised my ire, and it's worried about what the consequences of that will be. No matter how nicely I've treated that camel in its entire history, if I growled at that camel and I showed disappointment, anger, that camel is incredibly sensitive to that. So use that knowledge to your advantage. Understand that camels are equally sensitive to kindness. Another one of the most important things that I believe is fundamental to good training is never allowing the camel to pull its head away. It must never ever pull away from you in those very early days. It must never break its rope. As you're going to tie it up to something, it must never pull away and unravel the rope and zzz and pull away, because if it does it just once, it spends the rest of its life knowing it can do it. And of course, the greatest virtues to have when you're training camels is patience. You've got to be gentle and you've got to be persistent. If you've got patience, you'll get there. If you don't, you'll get there too, but you'll end up with a pretty rotten camel and it'll take you a lot longer. I often say the worst of techniques work. So be patient, be gentle, and be persistent. I'll say it again, I've said it many times. Once you've won a camel's trust, you can do anything with it. If you're getting into camels, I wish you every success. Be kind. Understand that there's no aggro, it's only fear, and be patient, and you'll get there.